Well, hello my friends and welcome back. This is Jennifer McGuire. Today I'm sharing with you how to create a wreath of die cuts. Well, it's not really a wreath, but it is a circle of die cuts where the focal point in the center contains the sentiment. There are many ways that you can go about doing this, including drawing pencil lines and measuring things out. But today I'm going to show you how to do this technique using the Gina K Wreath Builder templates. Now, normally the Gina K Wreath Builder templates are used for stamping a wreath. And I will link here to a playlist of a bunch of different videos that I have done using those templates. There are so many ways you can use them. But today I'm using them with die cuts to arrange them in the perfect circle. I found that this is really easy to do, so I was excited to share it with you. This technique is also great for anyone who doesn't have a stamping tool because you're able to do the die cut wreath using the Gina K Wreath Builder template, but you don't need a stamping tool to do so. The Wreath Builder template is an inexpensive tool, and this will just show you many other ways you can get use from it. I have several examples for you today, each with a little variation on the main technique. Let's start with this pretty simple card here where I created a circular element of those marker images. I got those images from this Gina K Crafty Notes stamp set. This is a new large stamp set with lots of great crafty images and crafting sentiments. There's some fun ones here like crafty friends stick together, or washi your worries away, or you were cut out for greatness. So I'll use a few different images from the set in today's video, along with a few of the sentiments. For this example, I'm going to start by stamping my sentiment directly in the center of a 4" by 4" piece of white cardstock. I first use my T-ruler and pencil to draw a line down the center of that piece, both horizontally and vertically. Where those lines meet, I know is the center of this piece. I'm using my MISTI stamping tool in Gina K Amalgam black ink to stamp that sentiment, but you can use an acrylic block if you prefer. Now I have a bunch of marker images from that Gina K stamp set that I showed you. I cut them out and colored them, and I have 8 of them. 8 is the key number when using the Wreath Builder template. Okay, so I'm going to put some adhesive on the back of my cardstock and glue it to my desk. That way this stays put while we do this technique. Normally when using the Wreath Builder template for stamping a wreath, the template stays put and you rotate the paper. However, for today's technique, we're doing the opposite. So we're going to hold our paper onto our desk. So I did a little freeze frame here so I can talk a little bit about this template. This is the Gina K Wreath Builder template. There are actually 2 sold together in the original set. There's this one that has room for a 4" square in the center, and a smaller one that has room for a 3 3/4" square in the center. Gina K also has a mini Wreath Builder template available, which I'll link to below, and larger ones now available, which I'll talk about at the end of this video. But for all of my card examples in today's video, I'm using the original Gina K Wreath Builder template, the one that has a 4" by 4" opening. Okay, so now it's time to start this card. I have put one of my little markers down onto my background, and I used some foam tape to adhere it there so I could get lots of dimension. I could have stamped all these markers into this wreath shape, but I thought the dimension would be fun. Next, I used some scrap cardstock and that same marker coordinating die and die cut from the center. This will be my guide. I'm positioning it right over that first marker because we know that's where we want these to be glued. And I taped the guide onto my Wreath Builder template. So you see how it flips up there? Now I'm going to rotate my template. So watch, I'm going to just rotate it 1 turn. So I'll rotate it here. I'll flip my guide back down. And now we're going to add another marker into that guide. So that little guide that we've taped onto our template is just helping us get the exact position to create a fun wreath from these die cuts. So I'll rotate it again, flip the guide down, and add a marker in the opening. So this technique is really helpful if you have a coordinating die for your images. It helped me cut all of these out and it helps me create this guide. But I'll show you later on how you can do this technique without the coordinating die. Keep in mind, each time I add a pen down into that guide, I am using foam tape behind it so that it has nice dimension. If I wanted a 1-layer flat card, I could have just stamped these and used the Gina K Wreath Builder template as it is intended to be used. But I thought this was a great way to use the template without a stamping tool and to get some fun dimension. Now I could have created this wreath of die cuts simply by drawing pencil lines and measuring it out, but that would have been really difficult to do, especially since I put my pens down at this fun angle. So I thought that the template was really helpful, and as you could see, it didn't take long to do at all. Next, I'm using Gina K Connect glue to glue a piece of white craft foam behind our panel. This will give it some nice even raised dimension. I will then glue this onto a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 inch note card that I created with the new Gina K Whisper cardstock. This is a beautiful super light gray cardstock that provides a little bit of contrast between that white panel that we're putting on top. So here's the completed card, very simple design. Really the most time is spent stamping, coloring, and cutting out those markers, but it's definitely worth it. Okay, now I also stamped on the envelope flap. If you look here, you can see little envelopes that are on the envelope flap. I used that along with the Gina K Whisper ink, which is a light gray ink, on many of my envelopes today. This is the background stamp that I used for that. It's from Neat and Tangled. It's called the mail stamp, and I just think it's such a fun background. Okay, my next example steps it up in 2 ways. One, my wreath is going to be towards the top left of my note card, and I used twice the amount of die cuts. Last time I used 8 die cuts, this time I'm using 16. Multiples of 8 is always the best. This time I decided it was best to stamp my sentiment last. So I found a circle die that's about the size of my sentiment, and that I will use as kind of a placeholder as where my sentiment will go, and you'll see that in a moment. Next, I'm going to draw an X on one of my corners. This will be my key corner, and you'll understand in a moment why we're doing that. So I'll put an X up here that will be my key corner. From that corner, we're going to draw pencil lines 2 inches in. So you can see from one side, I'm doing 2 inches in, and I'll draw a line there. And then from the top, I'll measure 2 inches down and draw a line there. This will be the center of our wreath, which remember is offset to the top left of our paper. So that'll be the center of our wreath. Okay, so now I have my little circle die. That's just my placeholder for where our sentiment will be. I always find I get better results if I stamp the sentiment last, unlike what I did on my first example. So I'm just going to tape that circle there, just for now, just temporarily. And around that, I will place my little die cuts. Once again, I'm temporarily adhering this to my work surface so it stays put. And I have the same wreath builder template. Notice that my paper is much too big for the template. That's okay. As long as you put the key corner, the one with the X, into one of the corners of the template each time, you're set. So only pay attention to that one key corner, and you can see how it fits into the corner of the template. Okay, so I'm going to start by positioning one of my pencils, putting it right up against that circle die in the center. I have a little guide that I created from scrap paper and the coordinating die, and I'm taping it onto my template. So now I'm going to rotate the template. Watch, I rotate the template, and I just make sure that the key corner ends up in the template once again. So each time we're going to rotate our template, line up that key corner, put our little guide down, add a little pencil die cut, and then rotate again. So you can see how this really is helpful here, because if I would have tried to eyeball the placement of all these long little pencils, I never would have gotten it right. But by creating that little guide, that blue cardstock piece with the opening, and taping it onto our wreath builder template, I'm able to get the perfect position each time. So you see, I just take the template, rotate it once again, line up the key corner, and add the pencil. I think what's really fun about this technique is that you can make use of some of the small images that you may have. So many of our stamp sets have small little flowers or hearts or pencils or other images, and this is a great way to use them to make a big impact. And remember, you could have just used the template as it was originally intended and stamped all of these pencils into a wreath. But because I put foam tape behind each one, it has that fun dimension that really makes it stand out. And I didn't need to use a stamping tool to do so. So now I have my 8 first pencils down. I have a little rainbow there, but I wanted more pencils. So I put one right between the pink and the red pencil. I positioned it where I thought would work good. And I'm going to repeat the same process, moving my guide to this new spot. So there's my little guide, tape it in place. And now we're going to do the exact same thing. Rotate through all the positions, putting down a pencil each time. So I end up with double the amount of images since these are so tiny that it works perfect to put more. So you can put as many down as you want. You can make this wreath or whatever we're calling this as full as you want. Just keep continuing with the same process. Again, the most time for this technique was stamping and cutting out all of those pencils, but I really like the final results. Now I'm going to trim this down so that my wreath of pencils is towards the top left of my note card. I want this panel to end up being 4 inches by 5¼ inches so that I can put it on a traditional note card. So I'm cutting off some of the excess. Now I know some people are probably panicking because I'm cutting off those pencils. I can save those little pieces for another card, but I thought it would look really neat to have these pieces hanging off the edges like this. Next, I'm stamping the sentiment at the center. I find that stamping the sentiment at the end is better because you can get it perfectly centered. And I use my stamping tool so I don't mess up. I added my panel with craft foam behind it onto a 4¼ by 5½ inch note card that I created from that Gina K Whisper light gray cardstock. And then I have a matching envelope that's pink, and I stamped that neat and tangled background with the Gina K Whisper ink. Yes, that's a light gray ink, but when you stamp it on colored paper, it gives a fun tone-on-tone look. There's so many things you can do with that light ink. Okay, here's my next example. I'm not going to go through the process of it because it's just like the card I did. However, I went around a 3rd time to add 8 more candle die cuts. So this is the Gina K Make-A-Wish stamp set. I really liked that sentiment and that tiny little candle. And I thought it'd be fun to create a wreath with lots of those candles. So this one actually has 24 candles on it. So I did the same process as I did for the pencil example, but I went around a 3rd time to add 8 more candles. Now this one would have been faster just to stamp all those candles. But by using die cuts, I have the dimension behind them, and there's no need to use a stamping tool with it. Okay, so far all of my examples just show using die cuts for a wreath. But I wanted to show you that you could use die cuts for the wreath, but also some stamping too. If you look closely, there are tiny little gray hearts stamped in a circle on this card also. So this time I'm using the Mama Elephant Hogs and Kisses stamp set. I thought this set was just adorable. So many fun images and sentiments. I'll be using the hearts and that little heart card shape also. For the sentiment, I'm using the new Gina K Crafty and Creative stamp set. This is a small set with a great price point, and I'll be using the Be Creative Everyday sentiment for this card. I'm starting with white cardstock that is cut to 4 inches by 4 inches, and I'm temporarily taping that onto my work surface to hold it still. I then found a circle die that's slightly larger than our sentiment, and I'm just going to tape that temporarily to the center of our cardstock piece. This time I'm just eyeballing it. And again, I'm not die cutting with that circle die. It's just a holding place so I can arrange my stamping and die cuts around it. This time I'm stamping with the Wreath Builder template. So I'm using the stamping tool since I'm stamping. So I have my cardstock in the center of the Wreath Builder template, and I've arranged some of those little hearts from that Mama Elephant stamp set. And I have them arranged so they're slightly outside of that circle die, and then we can remove that die. This time I'm stamping with that Gina K Amalgam Whisper ink, which is a super light gray. It's great because it stamps light, but if you double stamp it, it stamps a little bit darker, which is what I decided to do for this card. If you like doing no-line coloring, this is a great ink for that because it's Copic marker friendly, watercolor friendly, and Gamsol friendly. I'm not doing any coloring with this, just stamping with the light ink. Each time I rotate the paper in my template before stamping, and that gives me a stamped wreath. So when you're stamping with the Wreath Builder template, you're rotating the paper. When you're arranging die cuts with the Wreath Builder template, you're rotating the template. It's just two different ways to use it. I decided to do some more stamping to fill in all of that area. So I end up with a circular wreath made of little gray hearts. Okay, now once I'm done with that, it's time to add our die cuts. So I don't need the stamping tool for this. I'm following the same process that I did before. I put down my first die cut, put a guide around it and tape that to the template. Then I start rotating and adding more die cuts into the guide. So I start with 8 cards and I did a rainbow on the hearts. Once again, I'm into those rainbows with these wreaths. Then after I did my first 8 cards, rotating each time, I am starting with my 9th card there in between 2 of the others. Move my little guide so it's taped to the template right around that. And then start rotating and adding more. So I'll end up with 16 cards arranged kind of in a staggered little wreath around the center where I have stamped my sentiment. Once I was finished, I added this piece with some craft foam onto a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 inch note card that I created with that Gina K Whisper cardstock, that light gray cardstock. I really like making square cards. They're my favorite to make. And I put these in 5 inch by 5 inch square envelopes, which I'll link to below. I really like this example because you have the stamping in the background and the floating die cuts on top. So for this one, I used the Wreath Builder templates in both ways for stamping and die cutting. Okay, my next example is just like the others, but I wanted to mention a few things about it. On this one, I used the other Crafty Friends sentiment. Now that sentiment actually has a paintbrush and paint tube as part of the image, as you can see on the stamp set there. But I didn't want the paintbrush and paint tube for this card, so I just cut the stamp. I know this panics some of you, but I promise it doesn't hurt the stamp. And now I can use the sentiment without the added little image, so I just have the words alone. I can always arrange them how they were intended onto an acrylic block and stamp them together. Okay, now for this one, I'm just going to show this very quickly because it's like the others. I started with a 4 inch by 4 inch piece of white cardstock, taped that to my desk. I have my template and I'm putting down my first pair of scissors. And then I have my little guide there that I'll line up with that first one and tape that onto our template. So we have that little guide that flips so that we can position all of our other scissors in a perfect circle. Once again, I did the first 8 images, so I rotated each time and added a die cut each time. After I have all 8 of those down, I repeated the process to add another pair of scissors in between so that I end up with 16 pairs of scissors. And I kind of gave them a little staggered look, so I ended up creating this fun pattern from scissors, which I think is really unique and different. Now I added that onto a bigger note card. This one is 5 inches by 5 inches. And so I use a 6 inch by 6 inch envelope for that. And again, I use the Neat and Tangled background stamp to decorate the envelope. Okay, it's time to do a card example that's a bit different. In this case, I used larger images and I actually alternated between 2 different flower shapes. You can see bigger and medium sized ones. Let's first start with the stamping that I did on the background with some leaves. So this one has lots of dimension. I used the Gina K Watercolor Flowers stamp set for this. I really liked the images and that it has a bunch of separate leaves. And I like the sentiment, so I'll use everything from this set. Now I started with a 4 inch by 4 inch piece of white cardstock, and we're going to do the stamping of the leaves first. So I have my Wreath Builder template in my MISTI stamping tool since we're stamping with the template. I've arranged a few of my leaves, And I will go ahead and stamp these repeatedly around in a wreath shape using Gina K Ink. I did start this time with my sentiment stamped in the center, but you could do that afterwards if you want. I always seem to do it a little bit different. So you can see each time I'm stamping with the key lime ink and actually double stamping it to make the ink a little bit darker. Then I rotate it one turn in the template and stamp again until I have a full wreath formed. I actually went back and added a few more leaves in that wreath also. And now I am temporarily taping that to my work surface. This time we're adding die cuts, so we don't need the stamping tool. I'm putting down my first flower. This is a big pink one, and I have a guide that I created using the coordinating die, positioning that around our pink flower, and then taping it onto the stencil. Now this time I'm doing 2 turns each time. Watch, I rotate it once, and I rotate it again. So we're only going to put down 4 die cuts of this shape. I did rainbow color, so every other color is a big flower like this one. So now I'm going to rotate it twice, 1, 2, and then put down another die cut. The reason I am skipping a turn each time is so that we can go back and add a smaller flower in between these. So we have 4 bigger, 4 medium. Okay, so I have my first 4 large flowers down. Now I'm taking a medium-sized flower that I stamped with some sea glass ink, taping that down wherever I want it, kind of up against one of the other large flowers. Once I have it in the position I like, I have a little guide that I created. I'll line it up with that flower and tape it to the template. Once again, I'm going to rotate 2 turns and add another medium-sized flower. Rotate 2 turns and repeat that. So this will fill in the open areas between. So again, we have 8 images that we've added, or 8 die cuts. 4 larger, 4 medium, and they alternate. To finish the card off, I'm adding a pretty big blob of tonic gold Nuvo drops, gold glitter Nuvo drops. I like the look of those when they dry at the center of flowers. So this was a 4" by 4" piece, and I added it to a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 note card that I made from Gina K Whisper cardstock. So there you can see lots of dimension to this one since we did the stamping on the background, and then we added the die cuts with foam tape. By using the template for the stamping and the die cut placement, we end up with a really good arrangement here that's evenly spaced out. Also, this card shows that you can do this technique with larger images also. Okay, now it's time for my last card, and this one shows how you can do this technique even if you don't have the coordinating dies for your stamp set. And also, this one, each of the die cuts is different, so not all 8 of the die cuts are the same, they're all different. I thought this stamp set from Clearly Besotted was so cute. This is the Love You More stamp set. Take a closer look at this one, there's a lot of fun stuff. So basically you can stamp a card that says, I love you more than shoes, coffee, donuts, beer, shopping, anything you want. And there's different images to go with it. So I thought a circle of some of my favorite things with the I love you more in the center would be super fun to give to my kids. Since this card design is pretty simple, I wanted to add a little bit of interest to the background, but nothing too distracting. So I decided to use the My Favorite Things Itsy Bitsy Polka Dot background stamp. This creates tiny little stamped dots, and I'm using the super light Gina K Whisper ink once again. Again, this gives a light look, so I'm going to actually stamp it a few times just to make it a little bit darker. Once I'm done with my stamping, I trimmed the piece down to 4 inches by 4 inches. And I temporarily taped that onto my desk so that it will stay put while we do the addition of the die cuts. So I have my first die cut, and I'm putting it down with craft foam right where I want it to be, saving room for a sentiment in the center. Then I created a guide from scrap paper and a circle die that's slightly bigger than all of my die cuts. So I'm going to tape that onto my template, and this guide will be helpful in placing down all these different shape die cuts. Each time I'm going to put my die cut down at the center of that circle using foam tape, then I'll rotate it and repeat that. So if you want to use different shapes for each of your 8 different die cuts, you can use this circle template, Or if you have, say, a bunch of stamped images you cut out by hand and don't have a coordinating die to create your guide, just use a circle instead. You'll see each of these are different sizes and shapes, but because I use this technique, I was able to position them in a way that's pleasing to the eye in a nice perfect circle onto the front of our panel here. Next, I have the sentiment that says, "I love you more than," and I'm cutting that in half. I know that scares some people, but that way I can stack my sentiment and it fits in the center here. Then I put 3 little dots with the black pen next to them, and then added this onto a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 inch Whisper cardstock note card. And I used craft foam to add that for dimension. So this is a pretty simple card. I like how the dots add some interest to the background and how those images kind of float on the card thanks to the craft foam. Because we use the template, we have great positioning of all of those die cuts. I could have measured or eyeballed this, but this seemed to give the best results. Okay, before we go, I wanted to show you the new Gina K Wreath Builder templates that are large sized. Now here's a project that my friend Gina made. I just thought this was beautiful. This was at her booth in Creative Ovation. That's a large framed picture that she created using the large Wreath Builder. So she printed on her computer, "Welcome to my craft room," and then she used the large templates to do the stamping around it. So if you like to make home decor pieces, this is for you. Or if you want to make larger cards. So there are all of these different templates included in the set, and I'll try to do a video with them soon. Now, if you want to do stamping with the Wreath Builder templates, you will need to have the Mermory size MISTI. This is the Big Mama MISTI. It is 12 inches by 12 inches, I believe, and you will need that in order to use those super large templates. However, if you don't have that large stamping tool, you could still get the templates and do today's technique for die cut placement. But if you are interested in making larger cards or larger pieces, you can actually get these templates and the Mermory MISTI in a bundle for a discounted price over at Gina K, and I'll link to that below. I didn't get a chance to use these products in today's video, but I'm really excited to use them, so I hope to use them in a future video. In the meantime, I'll link to Gina's information about it below. She came up with some great projects using this. Okay, so there you have a way to use your Wreath Builder templates for creating the perfect circle of die cuts. I hope you'll try this. It's really fun to do and a great way to use those small images, any ones that you may have. If you are interested in any of the products that I talk about, I always link to multiple sources in my description below here on YouTube. But over on my blog, I have a lot more information for you. So you can click there on the top right to head there. In the middle are a couple other videos that might be of interest. You are all awesome for sticking around for this video. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you again soon with more techniques.